Today's video was initially meant to be about Belara and what your choice on what to do about the archive spirit says about your ideology with regards what we do with knowledge and the role and purpose it is to serve within society, especially the type of knowledge that is often considered dangerous. But alas, I am currently in the middle of my second, third, and fourth playthrough of Dragon Age the Veilguard. Yes, I am playing them concurrently because I am enjoying the game. If you didn't like the game or think I'm wasting my time, that is fine and is your opinion. You're allowed to have it. Let me have mine. So as I was saying, I'm currently running through my second, third, and fourth run of the game. However, I am much ahead in my second, which is Darren McCarr's run, and they are romancing Lucanis de la Morte. And so I got to the part in the romance where you get to go into Lucanis's mind palace and we are met with the choice. What should unite Lucanis and Spite in a shared goal that would be Lucanis's impetus to live the memories of the place and focus on their shared future? Should it be their desire to punish Ilario for his crimes or their desire to save Katerina from possible death? As I waffled on this choice, I realized that here is an unexpected choice I didn't see coming when I decided to make my choice series, which for those who don't know, I have a playlist titled Veilguard's Choices, where I examine the choices we've gotten to make in the game so far and how they speak to us on an ideological level. If you haven't seen any of the videos yet, do check out the playlist. I would leave it linked in the description bar as well. But anyway, being stuck on the choice had me realizing that my baby girl Belara's video would have to wait till Monday, as instead I want to talk about the pain and betrayal we experience at the hands of our families, how they hurt us and trap us, and how Lucanis's choice in that scene speaks a lot to layers of familial abuse and how we navigate that situation and resolution. So if that is something that interests you, keep watching. Now, before I delve into the video proper, a quick introduction. Hello, I'm Noria, and on this channel I do media analysis where I talk about characters, character arcs and journeys, themes, narrative structures and story across various media, movies, TV shows, books, anime and video games. If that sounds like your jam or something you might be interested in, do consider checking out some of my other videos. If you like what you see, consider hitting subscribe. Or if you rather simply watch me play video games instead, then consider checking out my Let's Play channel. P.S. It's Noria. Link to that will be in the description bar as well. And with that said, thank you for giving me the gift of your precious time and sitting with me as we talk about Lucanis de la Morte and why I find the sin of his Mind Palace quest so fascinating. Because here is the thing, in my first playthrough as Larima Ladea, I romanced Emmerich because I role-played Larima as being utterly smitten by Emmerich the minute she laid eyes on him, and so she had zero interest in flirting with anyone else at that point. What that meant, however, was that in my first playthrough, I never got the chance to experience Lucanis's romance. And we never got the mind palace scene, which I found very interesting. And to me was quite an apt narrative choice to have that locked behind the romance rook. I will go into details later on in another video why I think that particular choice was made and why it works for me. Which is a great way for me to quickly interject that all of this is my opinion and as such is quite subjective. You might not agree with me, and matter of fact, I do expect some people to disagree with me on the points I'm about to make, and that is fair and works well for me because I do think of video games as pieces of art, and like most art, is open to interpretation. We all bring a bit of ourselves when we seek to understand art, which then ensures that, due to those inherent bias and lived experiences, our interpretations of these pieces of art will be varied and subjective. It doesn't make my understanding of it more valid than yours, and vice versa. It just means that we are each looking at the work through different lenses. And whichever way we choose to approach it is both right. Now, when Spite pulls us as Rook into Lucanis's mind palace, we are dropped right at the entrance to the ossuary. And Spite asks us to unlock the doors so we can reach Lucanis and convince him to leave. That was when it finally clicked for me that Spite's constant talk about wanting out wasn't merely referring to him wanting to leave Lucanis's body or the lighthouse, but he also wanted out of the self-imposed prison that Lucanis had put himself in by virtue of his shame and anger at what was done to him, and his inability to see a way in which he can live with that violation. Because, yes, I do consider what Zara did to him, did to them actually, because I am counting Spite in this equation. I consider what Zara did to them both a violation. By forcefully pulling Spite away from the Fade and forcing him into and onto Lucanis, she violated them both. And as is the case with a number of assault victims, their very different reactions to the act speaks to how a lot of us tend to react to that violation. We either find ourselves stuck in the memory, unable to see a path forward, or are desperate to get out of our skin and away, as far away as possible. Might I go into the writing of Lucanis as a representation of abuse survivors and how his romance also speaks towards a path of healing, hence why I personally never begrudge him a romance with Nev, even though I see the clear difference between Lucanis with Rook and Lucanis with Nev? Maybe. If you're wanted, I might be convinced to make a video to that effect in the new year. Let me know in the comments if you want it. But back to Lucanis, Spite and Rook. Spite tells us to go after the four locks, keeping Rook from immediately seeing Lucanis. And of the four locks we encounter, I'm going to only focus on two in this video, as they represent Lucanis's complicated relationship with his family best. The first of which we run into being Caterina de la Morte. Spite sees her and immediately tells us she smells of tenderness and terror, rage and relief, old, stale fear of disappointment. The first four emotions are more recent, caused as a result of Lucanis's oscillating emotions at the discovery that his grandmother is still alive, albeit he has no idea what her present state is and if she's been hurt in any way. What I would like to focus on, however, and turn our attention to is the last one: old, stale fear of disappointment. Now, I know a lot of people played Veilguard and are insistent that a lot of the nuance from Tevinter Knight was stripped from the game, but I personally am of the opinion that some of the complex relationships were woven into the subtext of the story we get in Veilguard. For example, Lucanis's relationship with his grandmother. In Tevinter Nights, as readers, we are meant to see that Lucanis clearly reveres his grandmother. Her training of him as an assassin has so sunk itself into his very being that he finds himself using the rhymes she used to train him to keep count of the foes he has to take down, meticulously and methodically, to ensure that no one escapes back in the Wingmaker's job. And in the story, he also points out the abuse he underwent as a child, with Katerina using her cane to hit him to get him to focus on his training. And in that story, we get the sense of the high expectations Katerina has always had of Lucanis, and the burden that places on him and Ilario both, who even in that book, if you read between the lines, is aware that Lucanis is Katerina's favorite and is jealous of that. And before Lucanis leaves on the boat, he asks him again, Ilario asks him again, if Lucanis would be willing to turn Katerina down should she name him a hare. Lucanis's response of not being able to say no to the first talon of the crows, I personally think, is kind of what sealed his fate. But away from the familiar rivalry, we can tell from the slight description of his relationship with Katerina that we got that Lucanis looks up to her, which is understandable. She is his grandmother after all. But other than that, she is the one who raised him, who trained him, who was present for his mistakes and his failures, and I'm pretty sure that Lucanis's disinterest in becoming first Talon, his belief that he isn't suited to the role, whilst he knows that Katerina prefers him to take up the mantle, as he's the one who took to her training best, also contributed to that stale fear of disappointment. He's always been terrified of letting her down. He loves her as much as he fears disappointing her. And in having that responsibility, that knowledge that things could go wrong, and if he fails or makes a misstep, he's going to disappoint her yet again and lead to her death this time around, you can see why that's the emotions that Spite senses when Katerina makes her appearance. But it's not just the emotions, it's how Lucanis uses Katerina to show Rook and us what he fears the most should they successfully get Katerina back. It made his peace with the fact that she never got the chance to learn that he's become an abomination in the period of his imprisonment, that he's been bound with a spirit. That was something, yet another disappointment he had thought he could spare her. But now that there's confirmed proof that she's potentially alive and can be rescued, all that fear comes surging to the surface again. That she would look at him differently and see not the beloved grandson she helped raise, but the monster is become, now possessed by, in Lucanis's words, voiced by Katharina, a demon. That is how Lucanis expects his family, those who are expected to love him no matter what. That is how he expects them to react to the existence of spite in his life. But then you as Rook can point out that that might be the case. But Katerina wouldn't think of rejecting him anyway. To which Katerina calls Lucanus her poor boy and vanishes. In that conversation, and with our past knowledge of their relationship, we see that even at what Lucanus thinks of as his most monstrous, in his subconscious, in the face of this woman who had loved him and also terrified him in a single-minded quest to make him the best assassin she could raise, she still loves him. And this is a knowledge you as Rook get to make him aware of. With Ilario, however, Spite tells us the mix of contradiction that is Lucanus's feelings towards his cousin. Sharp, jagged edges, hurt with every breath, grief and relief, hope and anger, it's all mixed together in a way that Lucanus is not able to separate those emotions. He feels them all at once at Ilario. It's the exact same way we tend to feel about relatives and family members who have hurt us in such truly damaging ways. You feel the rage and anger. You are hurt at what they are capable of, how deeply they manage to hurt and cut you to the deep. And yet, somewhere in all of that rage is the love you once felt, the hope at a possible resolution to the betrayal, that they would realize their folly and that things can be restored to how they were. It is a confusing mix of emotions, and just that line with Spite says as much. But also, Ilario voices Lucanus's fear and concern, his belief that as Rook, you have better things to worry about, that there is so much more you have to deal with, gods and the end of the world. What's subtly communicated there is a belief that Lucanus, isn't worth the effort you are expending on him, which is why I find it even more heartwarming in the romance commitment scene when, after Lucanus tries to brush off his effort in making you dessert by saying that it's nothing or not enough, you get to tell him that it is enough, that Lucanus is enough. It is fitting because usually our family are the first people who get to scar us that deeply. They are the first point of pain that a lot of us experience in our lives and then project forward afterwards, because nobody can cut you quite as well or deep like those who are meant to love you and care for you unconditionally. And they often do it too when we're young and haven't learned to have our guard up or put our armor on. Ilario's actions have convinced Lucanus that he isn't worth the effort of being loved, seen, or saved. And as Rook, you get to show him that that simply isn't the case. Still using Ilario, Lucanis expresses his concern that letting him go would only cause more grief, as he has convinced himself that spite is merely a manifestation of the demon he's had inside of him all along. And that is when we realize that the reason why the mind palace, or rather the mind prison, exists for Lucanus is because it's easier for him to exist within that space, punishing himself and keeping himself from the love and freedom that's possible and available to him, because leaving that and getting the chance to truly live would mean coming to terms with the fact that he's become what most people would consider an abomination by virtue of his cousin's direct actions and desire to see him killed, all for the sake of acquiring more power. And for those who don't think that that makes sense for Hilario's characterization or motivation, all I would say is the wig maker's job was from Lucanus's perspective and POV. As readers, we never really get to actually know Hilario. The Hilario we meet in the story, and even the one we meet in the wake, is based off of the perception of those around him. Can Hilario mourn his cousin and still blame him for leaving him no choice than to have him killed? Because unfortunately, Lucanus would always be Katerina's favorite? Yes. Duality exists in all of us. But back to Lucanus and getting out of the ossuary mind prison. We then, as Rook, get the chance to help him make a choice, to give him the will to leave the place and actually live. There needs to be something he and Spite can bond over that would be the impetus they both need to actually live. Should that driving force be the desire to punish Hilario or to save Katerina? And that is where I think Veilguard continues to give us interesting choices that speak to what matters more to us as players. Questions that have us asking what we actually believe in. Are you or your Rook the type of person who believes that every slight must be met with even more brutal force? That betrayal can be tolerated from anybody else, but family are meant to have your back, and so when they don't, when they fail you in such a devastating way, you need to meet them with burning, righteous indignation and vengeance for slights committed? If that's the case, then you most likely chose to encourage Lucanus to be driven by his desire to punish Hilario. Maybe you're the type of person who believes blood is thicker than water, and that familiar betrayal are the absolute worst thing a person can do, and so you become one of the Erinyes chasing after Orestes, demanding blood for the murder of Clytemnestra, driving him almost to madness. And why wouldn't you? Zara reveals to us that Hilario's plan was always to have Lucanus killed, and the only reason why Lucanus lived long enough to uncover Hilario's plan was because Zara herself wanted to see if she could turn Lucanus into one of the most powerful demons in her arsenal, bound to her will, an assassin at her own disposal. She wanted the irony of the demon of Viranthium becoming her personal lapdog, which was what screwed over Hilario and his plans. Plans that would have seen him murder the very cousin who grew up by his side, the cousin who was raised with him like his own brother. If you're someone who has been royally screwed over by the same people who were meant to have your back, protect you, and love you, by virtue of them being your family, and instead they betrayed, backstabbed you, and found ways to hurt you, and that pain is what pushes you till date, then you most likely chose to have Ilario punished. Because to you, that is the one unforgivable sin that family cannot, must not do. But if instead you're someone who believes that rather than waste time on the family that doesn't deserve you, rather than focus on the ones who hurt you and who are jealous of you or desirous to cause you pain, if you're someone who believes that your time is better spent on the ones who do love you, the ones who would go to the ends of the earth to save you, the ones who would convince a client to break into a prison under the sea to break you out of prison, then you probably chose instead to have Lucanis and spite turn their attention towards saving Katerina. Because in that choice is a decision on who is worth your time and effort. And for some people, rather than obsess over the ones who hurt them, they would rather focus on the ones who loved and saved them. And in that situation, choosing to save Katerina makes more sense. Because Katerina in this narrative is representative of us choosing to turn our attention instead to the future, to those who have treated us right and are deserving of the care and are worth fighting to save. Because yes, Katerina was abusive to Lucanis as a child, but we can say that unlike Ilario, the hurts she inflicted on Lucanis were never born out of malice. She hurt him to make him strong enough to survive their world, and Ilario was willing to kill him so that he could rule their world. So, in the choice between Katerina and Ilario, I do see depictions of abuse that we can experience at home within our family. And whilst they both hurt, it is a clear case of someone can be good-natured and still cause us pain, but we understand where they were coming from. And then there are the hurts leveled on us out of jealousy and spite. And in those cases, we get to decide who matters more. And I know I keep mentioning family, so the immediate thought might be to assume that because of Katerina and Ilario's blood relation to Lucanis, the family in this sense is only referring to blood family. That isn't the case. This can also apply to your chosen family as well, because in that scene, Lucanis not only chooses to save Katerina, but immediately after that, when we return to the lighthouse, the option pops up for us to then make a commitment to his romance. He chose us, Rook, too. In that scene, when we finally reach him after the fourth lock and convince him of how best to proceed to start his journey of leaving the mind prison, he chooses Rook. And I personally find that beautiful. I would also like to add, like I always do in this choices videos, that I personally don't think there's really any right or wrong answers for this choice. It all boils down to what matters more to us, or to the Rook we're role playing as. But as I'm sure you've already realized or guessed from the clips shared, I chose to have Lucanis inspired focus on saving Katerina. And that's the choice I will always make every time I choose to flirt with or romance Lucanis de la Morte. But what about you? What choice did you make? What choice would you make? Punish Ilario or save Katerina? Is that choice going to be canon for you, regardless of whether or not you romanced Lucanis at the end? Let me know in the comments, please. Your girl is curious. This is a bit of my longer video. As you can tell, my thoughts wandered a bit. If, however, you enjoyed or liked anything I had to say, do consider hitting the like button. If you didn't, the dislike button is right there too. If, however, you did enjoy the video, please consider sharing it. It helps my channel reach a wider audience who might discover that they like my corner of the internet a little better. And that would be real awesome, don't you think? Plus, it's incredibly supportive of my content, which, if you're watching for this long, I can only assume that you do enjoy what I have to say. Speaking of support, however, a huge thank you to my Patreons who have been of tremendous help in helping me keep the lights on this channel. You all are the bestest. Thank you. If you would like to consider supporting me on Patreon, the link to do so is in the description box. I make new videos 3 times a week: Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Whilst you wait for new content from me, do consider checking out my last video where I talk about what the choice to make Nev the protector of Dogtown or a symbol of hope could mean from an ideological perspective. Once again, I had some fun with that and I enjoyed making it. Until next time, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.